Yes.
All right, let's then just start. I hope I'll have both of you until the end.
Yes. Yes, for
Okay.
me.
Oh, yes, for you. Okay. Also, then I think we'll also try to the fact that it's Rosemary. I'll want your opinion on these. The
Yeah.
fact that it's only the two of them, I
Mhm.
think it will reduce on the workload, so we might
Yeah.
finish even much earlier.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's start
Mm.
then.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, guys, and nice to see you again. I'm not sure if you had seen Queen this clearly last time.
You
No.
didn't.
She was on and off behind John's machine and behind Lydia's machine. So
Uh-huh.
I really did pick the face, but at least now I can totally pick the face, which
Sure.
is a good thing. Now, if we meet in the streets somewhere in Kigali, I can be able to pick her
Like this is
out.
peace. This is
Like, this is
Queen.
Queen, I know you.
Sure.
Yeah, so like we said, I think today we should be able to move faster and finish earlier.
Yes.
And the beauty of it is also it's a very high level topic that we're handling today, which has
Mm-hmm.
obviously been touched in many other areas. I think I chipped in yesterday a bit on organizing and planning.
Yes.
That
The
already
other day,
picks
the
quite a
previous
bit,
day.
or the
Yeah.
previous day. So
Mm-hmm.
that obviously takes a bit of it. Next week, I know we have a delegation and a coordination. So you
Mm-hmm.
realize much of what you're talking about today has already been handled in bits and pieces. So
Yeah.
it's nothing totally new. It's basically just picking the bits and pieces of what you have been learning about and just looking at it at a high level. So that means it should be an easier way. And I can tell Queen, is it a tired or ate lunch?
Who is
The
tired?
yawning, Queen. She's yawning.
It's the
It says a
afternoon.
lot. But it's your thing in the afternoon
Yeah.
after
All
a
right.
long day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it shall be well. So this afternoon, we want to look at the role of leaders, managers, and supervisors. So of course, I'll always start by throwing it back to you. So don't us look at it in the order of supervisors, managers, and leaders.
Please.
Yes, so I'm throwing it back to you in your understanding. And I know you in your office, you probably don't have all those levels. Somebody is probably juggling almost all of them or two of them. But
Mm-hmm.
what comes in mind when you're thinking supervision, and what differentiates supervision from management, from your own thinking or from your own understanding? What comes to mind when you think supervision, and what separates supervision from management? Is not feeling very sleepy.
Yes. Uh,
I can go. For me, supervision, I feel
mm-hmm.
like it's the way I understand it. It's the act of you have one thing that you are looking over. It may be someone, it may be an activity, but it's just that one thing that you are supervising, that you're overseeing. And as for a manager tackles uh, it tackles a big number or a department. So yeah, that's what I understand about manager, and that's
All
Mhm.
right.
for
Thank
example, like here at QSOC, we are an HR consulting company.
Yeah.
So John is a project manager. He oversees like 4 projects, but on each project we have a supervisor on site.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That narrows it pretty well down to even where you are right now. So you're
Yes.
looking at management, it has a broader perspective compared to supervision, which is more of a narrow perspective. Lydia, you want to add to that?
Yes, just to add to that slightly is I think the supervisor works with the juniors to ensure that the procedure is followed, and the manager looks at is more leads the supervisor The supervisor leads the juniors, and then the manager leads the supervisor. So the manager looks at the big output of it all, and the supervisor usually has to get hands on to ensure that work is done in the right procedure.
Mm. Very, very nice perspective there that you're also looking at it in terms of how in touch you are with the work. So you're seeing a supervisor being more in touch with the people and the work that is being done. But also from a hierarchical perspective, we are looking at a manager, of course, being at a higher level compared to a supervisor. I think that pretty much summarizes what supervision is all about and what may demarcate the two. But again, even looking at it from that angle, do we think there are similarities? Are there things that we think should be common between supervisors and managers? Apart from the differences, do you think there's something else?
Yes, I think
Okay.
there is a similarity that they are all leaders.
Yeah, first of all, they are all leaders. That's very true.
Yes.
Anything else?
We look at output.
Yeah,
At the
they're
end
all.
of the day.
Yeah, at the end of the
Well.
day. At the end of the day, you're all asking yourself, are we achieving the goals? Are we achieving what needs to be achieved? And that's very true. Queen, you want to add anything?
No.
Sorry?
No, I have nothing to add.
You have nothing to add. Okay. Thank you very much. I think that what you're trying to say is that sometimes, again, depending on where you are, it might not be a very clear cut. Like, for example, between a supervisor and an assistant manager, it might be almost some few things overlapping. But if you look at it again separately, you'll see that in terms of hierarchy, in terms of how you're in touch with the work that is getting done, there could be a bit of difference here and there. And those are the differences that we actually get to appreciate. So I think that gives us a starting point of where we are. So give me a second as I try to share my screen.
Okay, and see it. Yes.
You can see it. Okay. So like I've said, we start by thinking through supervision first, because that helps us to think about what's the difference. I think we've looked at the similarities and the differences. We have a few similarities because we are all trying to move things towards the same direction. But when you look at it in terms of the actual work itself, then you're going to pick a few differences. For example, in terms of hierarchy, or in terms of how in touch you are with the work itself, and in terms of how broad or how narrow it is. I think that's basically what we've talked about. So in a nutshell, if I may try to summarize the many things that you guys have said, when it comes to supervision is one of the most important levels of management that you have. It is basically our first line defense, if I may put it that way. Supervision is a first line defense. It is the place where if something goes wrong, then things are actually going to get very wrong. Because as much as the manager, like you're saying, where John sits, he's thinking about the high level way of doing things. Someone in touch on the ground does not do the right job, then chances are things are very wrong. So supervision becomes a very important role because that's the first line of management, the first line defense. Because work gets done on the ground. At the top level, it's just high level planning and nice documents and nice policies, nice guidelines. But if the people on the ground don't get the work done, then you can rest assured that nothing is actually going to move. So in terms of supervision, a lot in terms of monitoring and regulating what is being done or the performance of the tasks that are being done on the ground. I think Queen has said that pretty well, that at the ground, you're trying to monitor and regulate the employees or the people who are on the ground getting the job done. So in a nutshell, what you actually are to summarize the functions or what supervision is actually trying to achieve. And the first thing that's trying to achieve is facilitating control. Because again, like you say, that's where the work is getting done. So if you don't get to control things at that level, then things are likely to get pretty bad. So it's the supervisor who keeps a very close eye or gets to find out what is really happening, and they're in close touch with the subordinates or the people who are on the ground getting the work done. So they keep a close eye on the people. They're also the people who can easily be able to rectify when things go wrong. Because I mean, the manager is at very high level. The manager is not seeing things as they happen instantly. The supervisor is seeing things as they actually happen instantly. So the beauty of that is that when something goes wrong, they actually get it corrected. So they take corrective measures pretty fast. They don't have to wait until a review meeting happened or an appraisal is happening. For them, it's a minute by minute, a moment by moment kind of getting things corrected. And that again makes a supervisor a very important person to try and facilitate control. The next thing that supervisors do, apart from facilitating control, they want to make sure that there is optimum utilization of resources. Irrespective of where you work or the organization that you are in, it is always important, and it is of high importance in an organization that the resources that you have are well utilized. Again, who understands these resources better than the person on the ground, than the supervisor? The supervisor can understand things as simple as water, as printing paper, as the smallest of things that actually happen, and including the people. Who does what? How are they doing it? Are we overwhelmed? They understand those nitty-gritties, and they can be able to recommend. So they're in a position to advise in terms of better utilization of resources. They're able to closely monitor activities that are going on. And at the end of the day, what you're trying to make sure is that they ensure there's effective work in the minimum possible time. Because again, we're trying to talk in terms of, later we talk about efficiency and effectiveness. So at any level of management, those two things are pretty important, effectiveness and efficiency. So part of what a supervisor needs to do is to make sure that we are getting the right work done, but is it being done using the right resources in terms of quantity and quality? So that are we doing very small work using so much resources? Or are we using so much resources to achieve work that is not even making sense? So again, all that is counted at the supervisor level because they're able to monitor utilization of resources. These resources could be the people, could be any machinery is being used, could be the normal utilization of things like paper, water, the normal things that we use in an office. All that is put into consideration when you're looking at supervisors. So they have a good job in terms of ensuring optimum utilization of resources. The next function, obviously, if you're with the people, discipline becomes your problem. So the supervisors have an important role to play in terms of discipline maintenance. So they are strictly watching and guiding the employees. And when we talk about discipline maintenance, it's not just the negative side of it. The problem is that the moment you hear the word discipline, we think the negative side of it. Even just guiding people to do the right thing is part of maintaining and enhancing discipline. Because that's the person who understands the policies, who understands how things should actually get done. And in that case, they're able to to advise the employees in how things should be done. At the same time, they're also able to promptly solve problems that come up. You came in late, we deal with it. You did not achieve your task, we deal with it. You're supposed to have done this, you deal with it. So again, on a time by time, moment by moment basis, a supervisor is able to ensure that they maintain that kind of discipline. So the third function that they have under supervision is discipline maintenance. The fourth one is feedback. Again, at the point where they sit, they are picking information from both angles. They have information from management and they have information from the subordinates that they are working with. So in that case, they have feedback and they have communication. They have feedback in the sense that whatever results that have been achieved on the ground, whatever ideas people are coming up with on the ground, whatever suggestions they have, and even complaints. Because again, even complaints come up, and sometimes they're genuine complaints that the person as a supervisor is not able to handle. It needs management to consider something being done for improvements to be made to the people who are doing the job. So all that information needs to be taken up by the supervisor, and then they take that feedback back to management or the manager who they report to. Then in that case, the manager can be able to take account of it or advise the right people to be able to feed back again to the people. Once they have taken feedback from the subordinates to management, then they have a way of communicating back. Because when they come back with directions, they come back with policies, they come back with instructions, they come back with a lot of information that needs to be communicated from top management to the rest of the people. So part of it again is communication. They need to give orders and directions to the subordinates. So the communication for a supervisor again goes two ways: feedback from the subordinates to management and directions or orders from management back to the subordinates. So there are a link in between to ensure that actually things get done in one way or the other. So that's part of what they do in terms of their functions. Then we have motivation. If you're working with people and you need work getting done, of course, again, motivation becomes your business. Not necessarily by cheering them on every morning, but one way of motivating people is making sure that the roles you give them are challenging enough. They have a reason to wake up and work. you're waking up something that is too boring, too routine, too the same thing I've been doing in and out all my life, chances are I'll get bored sooner or later. So as a supervisor, you have to have it at the back of your mind. The roles that I'm giving people, are they feeling challenged enough? Are they getting a reason to wake up tomorrow? Are they even feeling like they need to think to get it done? Or is it one of those things people say, I can do it with my eyes closed? If they get to a place where they can do things with their eyes closed, chances are motivation was lost a long time ago. So they need something to keep them awake. Of course, part of motivation also is giving feedback, constructive feedback and positive feedback. We talked through this when we were talking about performance management. Giving people feedback is important. Human beings like being told they have done well. They like being told you are doing well. They like being told you are making progress. You have made strides. You have helped us achieve this goal. That feedback is part of motivation. And who better suits to give that kind of feedback apart from the supervisor, who again sits with the person on a daily basis when they're getting the work done, but also getting a chance to tell them where they need to improve. Again, not always positive feedback. If something is not getting well done, if a change needs to happen, it's also important that the supervisor gives back that information as part of the feedback that actually needs to be given to the people. So those are some of the functions that we are seeing under supervision. They facilitate control, keeping an eye on the subordinates and the work that is being done, making sure they are doing the right work. And when things are not right, then they can do corrective measures. They have a role in making sure that resources are optimally utilized, whether they are human resources or any other resources, financial resources, machinery, materials, anything that is getting used in the project that is getting done. It's the work of the supervisor to make sure that the resources are optimally utilized without wastage. Then you have discipline, maintenance. As much as you're working with people, you have to make sure that standards are met in terms of discipline, watching them to make sure that they are doing the right thing, but not just watching them, also guiding them to make sure they know the right thing that needs to be done, and problem solving when things go wrong. That's part of discipline. Feedback, like we said, feedback and communication go hand in hand. Feedback from subordinates to management, communication from management back to the subordinates. Then you have motivation, by allocating challenging roles or giving feedback to the people, telling them what they are doing right or what it is that they might actually not be doing right, if at all there's something that they're actually not doing right. Together that far, any comment or question around the functions? Lydia, anything?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like you to throw more light on facilitating control.
On facilitating control.
Yes.
What do you have in mind? A situation you have in mind, or you're feeling like there could be more to it?
Okay, I could understand like keeping an eye on the subordinate, but rectifying flaws in the workplace promptly. How can that be done?
Okay. So when you look at a supervisor, many a times is the person who has, like we'll talk about later, it's probably the person who has very good in terms of technical skills when you look at the hierarchy of management. Like you said, there's a person working directly with the people, like in your case, the person dealing directly with the project that is happening. So they have the technical skills that of the work being done. Rarely do you pick a supervisor who does not have the technical skill of the work that they are supervising. The rest of the people might not have the technical skills, but for a supervisor, they need to have the technical skills of the work that is being done. So if I'm working through something, probably is even as simple as a system. I'm trying to post something in the system and it is not working, it keeps throwing errors, it is just not going through. The easiest thing I want to do, like they do in supermarkets, is call my supervisor and come fix this error for me. Because they are the people who have the technical ability and the technical know-how. So it's their work to rectify flows as they happen. So when I talk about flows, I'm not necessarily looking at the person's flow, I'm looking at the work itself. So that if the work that is the person is working on something is not going right, the technical person here as the supervisor should have the technical know-how of how that thing is supposed to work or how the end results should look like and should be able to help me. If I'm trying to come up with a report and it is not coming out the way it was saying it should come out, then the supervisor should be able to help me come up with that report. And I think the hardest thing about being a supervisor is that you need to know the technical work that is actually being done and be able to do it yourself much better than the people doing it. Because when they have an issue, it is your job to make sure that it actually gets done. Does that make sense, Lydia? You're good. Okay. Queen, any question or comments? You're good? Okay, so then, oh,
Rosemary,
sorry.
yes,
Yeah.
I think something I'll want to like know from the team is like the project manager, those who work on site are supervisors, right?
Yes.
Okay. What are some of the challenges you face with the supervisors?
Incident reports don't come on time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
The reports only, like in terms of people management.
Like incidents. If there's, in case of any incident, they're delayed to report on time.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Mm.
Rose.
And
Mm-hmm.
communicating any changes, like in case of any changes, the time shifts.
Mm-hmm.
They have to keep us updated, like
Updated.
shifts change,
Mm-hmm.
time sheets, so
Mm-hmm.
and so worked today and all that. We
Mm-hmm.
find that it keeps us going back and forth
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the month to do the reporting to the client.
Oh, okay. So you think that's where the biggest challenge is?
Yes, most of the times.
All right.
Mm.
All right. Thank you. Rosemary?
Thanks, Purity, for that addition. Lydia, there's something you mentioned before the changes. Like you said, something they don't report. I think I missed the first one. What was that?
The reports are not done on time.
Or the report's not done on time.
Yes.
Are you able to get feedback in terms of what the challenges are, and how does that communication happen? Is there like a scheduled time, like at the end of the week you guys give us a report, or at the end of the month? How is that scheduled, and how are you able to tell what challenges they are dealing with?
Yes, what usually happens is we have to push them to provide these reports. You might find that
Okay.
they are delayed. They claim we had so much to do, so much to supervise around, so much to take care of, and we didn't have time to sit in office to do the reports or
Mm-hmm.
things of a kind. They give
Okay.
excuses, but yes, they are delayed. At the end of the day, they are delayed, but they provide them.
Eventually, somehow.
Mm.
So the reports are supposed to be weekly, monthly?
Weekly. We do
Weekly reports.
weekly and monthly, yes. But you might
Okay.
find that if we set a precedent that reports must be sent out on Monday, we send them out on Wednesday. Or
Oh,
even
okay.
it's supposed to be sent out on the 13th of the month, we send it out. The monthly report is sent out on the 15th. So there's usually a slight delay, or even the timesheets reconciliations at the end of the month. You might
Mm-hmm.
find that maybe you paid a big or a smaller salary because the reconciliations took forever to get
Oh,
done before end month.
all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the pushing is still costing you financially, especially in terms of salaries, then don't you think there's something you need to measure from a performance perspective, so that I know if I was late for 3-4 months, then I'm losing my appraisal rating by a certain percentage. That might make me want to have my report sent on time.
On time. True, true.
Yeah.
Because I think in places where I knew we were always rated for when you, because most of the reports will be done by 5th of every month. So I knew if I always managed to send mine by 2nd or 3rd, then I'm always above expectation. If I send
Yes.
it on 5th, then I meet expectation. So I wouldn't allow myself to have a lower KPI just for something as small as a report. It does
Mm-hmm.
not cost me much. I would rather lose my KPI on something bigger that is beyond my control, rather than just a report which clearly I can sit and get done. So sometimes if the talking does not happen, then the measuring part of it might be another way to work around it.
Totally, I agree with you.
Lydia, does that help?
But at times when you overpush somebody, yes, it does. But at times when you try to beat the deadline or even exceed the expectations to do things earlier, you might find that you report the wrong information.
Of course,
Oh,
there has to be quality also. It can't just be the timing. You always look at it in terms of quantity and quality. So if it came on 5th with errors, then you still didn't meet or exit. You still did. So it has to go both ways.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, as you deal with different people, you also learn them and you see what works with them. Not everybody is motivated by a score.
true. I know.
Different.
Yeah.
So learn people also. People are motivated by totally different things. Okay, so I think we can move on to responsibilities around supervision. Like we promised today, we don't want to spend the whole day here, but we'll still get everything done. So in terms of responsibilities, and I think we have talked about quite a bit in terms of like for example, managing workflow. I know we mentioned that. I think that came from Lydia, if I'm not wrong. So part of the work that supervisors do is managing workflow, just to make sure that things are flowing in the right direction. Able to create and oversee the team's workflow because they have people on the ground. So it's time to try and understand, are these things flowing? What are we supposed to do on Monday? What are we supposed to do on Tuesday? What are we supposed to be doing next week? Just create that kind of a flow process so that the people can actually be able to follow a certain procedure. Because again, if you let everybody come in and do what they want, it's going to be a big problem. So you want to be at a position where people can actually be able to follow a certain way of doing things. And again, supervision becomes an easy and the best way to be able to do that. The next thing they have to do, of course, is train new hires. When you're on the ground, you have new people coming in every other day. It is your responsibility to make sure that they actually catch up. So they need to be able to help the new employees understand their new roles and support them in their transition. Because if the transition for new employees is not well done, again, you end up with many, many other problems that follow. So the easiest way to make sure that there is smooth running of things, the easiest way to make sure that there is easy transition of new employees who come in is to have supervisors who again understand the job and can easily introduce the new hires into the new role that they're actually working. So it is a job to train people, they orient people in terms of their company policies, the specific duties the person is performing, the company values, everything about the organization, not just about the job that they do. Again, you don't want to report to a job where you're just told this is your job description and this is what you do. They need to understand the whole company as a whole. Where does do things start? What is Q sourcing all about? How many branches do we have? Who leads where? How is that whole structure in Rwanda? Who reports to who? How is the management structure? That whole explanation needs to be given. What are our values? What is our mission? What is our vision? Just make sure that you inculcate the right culture into the new staff. It is very, very important. So again, when you have a supervisor, you need to make sure that the supervisor also understands the organization and the company, and they can actually represent it well, because they represent that to the new hires that come in, and what they tell them is what they carry. When you have a very negative supervisor, chances are they pass that negativity to the people. That is how you end up with a very messed up team that is always saying negative things about the work or about the organization, because that is what was passed on by the supervisor. So again, you need to have a supervisor who represents the brand of the organization. The next responsibility, I think you mentioned about team schedules. Who is coming to work today, who is away tomorrow, who is away the other day. If your supervisor is not able to do very nice work schedules, then you'll end up with a lot of work that is undone. It is a busy season and the person gave everybody a day off. It's a busy season and everybody decided to get sick. You can have genuine sick offs, but sometimes you might have fake sick offs. If the supervisor is not able to tell, there's a problem. But sometimes you can also have a supervisor with people collapsing at work because somebody had an emergency and they were not allowed to go home. Somebody is unwell and they're told you have to sit here and get your job done. That kind of flexibility with the employees in terms of work schedules is pretty important as a supervisor. So just being able to understand people and understand work so that the work gets done and the people also get to have their life, so to speak, in terms of their day off, their sick off, attending to personal emergencies, because they are also human, but work still gets done. Again, a very tricky balance, but there's the role of the supervisor to make sure that they create schedules and they manage those schedules so that work actually gets done. Because when they do that, this is probably what you're struggling with, the reporting back to you or to HR, depending on what needs to be reported. Because as a supervisor, after doing all that, it is not just for you. You are doing it because you need to update the people at the top and tell them what is going on. So if you don't get to update people and tell them what is going on, you will obviously have a problem. Because as again, the person who is on the ground with the people, it means you are evaluating each person and you want to understand what exactly are they doing. Not just in terms of the work itself, but in terms of the small things like punctuality. What time do they come to work? Their professionalism, do they represent the company well? If they're supposed to do a uniform or dress in a certain way, it's still a supervisor's job because they're in touch with the person. Any disciplinary issues, any non-compliance with company policies, any performance improvement that needs to get done. All those nitty-gritties in terms of performance comes from the supervisor, and they need to be able to evaluate each team member and have that information. Apart from just having it, then they actually need to report back that information. information for the whole team. How are you doing as a team? And how is every person performing? And I think that is what Lydia is alluding to in terms of sometimes these reports might take forever, but they need to understand that it is their role actually to be able to report on all those things, from the smallest of things to the biggest of things, like breaching of company policies. And again, when you have scheduled times when this reporting happens, it's very important so that it's not ad hoc. So it's good they know it's a weekly thing, but it's also good when they know what exactly needs to be reported. That way you can actually be able to hold them accountable in terms of reporting. And the other thing they need to do, of course, as they report, they eventually have a role in evaluating performance and giving feedback, because once they have been observing these employees, at the end of the day, they have now the actual performance evaluation. And in that case, they're able to give feedback, because if you are to recognize an employee who's on the ground, the only person who will let you know about such is the supervisor. From where you sit, you don't know who performs better, who comes to work early, who does more work. All those things are set down by the supervisor. So it's the work of the supervisor to evaluate the overall performance and give feedback to the management so that they can actually be able to recognize people who have done well or develop any improvement program that needs to be developed for them to actually become better. So very, very important work that the supervisor needs to do. They're also the people who can actually be able to identify career advancement opportunities for the people they have. So sometimes you might need a supervisor for another section and you don't want to go hiring from outside. So supervisors you already have can easily tell you, like, with this person I've been working with, and they're actually very good at what they do technically. They're very good with people in terms of this person can actually be able to do it. So again, they sit at a position where they can actually be able to give some recommendation in terms of promotions or any other movement that may be required for staff, of course, in consultation with senior management, because they might not have the authority to make that decision, but they can actually recommend or consult with the rest of the people to be able to tell who is actually doing a good job and warrants to be recognized in one way or the other. First part of the other responsibility is also making sure that they resolve employee issues as they happen. Issues in terms of discipline will always happen, but they don't need to go to HR all the time. Not every issue that comes up needs to be sent out to HR. So they need to be at a point where they understand how to be able to handle a few disagreements here and there. It is their job, because they're in the first point of contact. Before the employees get to the manager, before the employees get to HR, the supervisor is the first person of contact. So they need to be able to learn how to resolve some issues and some disputes. They need to learn how to mediate on minor disagreements. How do they sit in as objective as they can, as neutral as they can, let everybody speak their bit, and then eventually help people come up with a resolution. So if they are the people who are probably the cause of the disagreements and the disputes, then again, you will always have a very disgruntled team. Because if they cannot trust their own supervisor to sort out issues, the supervisor is always the cause of the problem, then they'll always either remain unhappy or always jump the supervisor to go to management or to HR to look for solutions. So again, you need a supervisor who can be able to act as a good mediator on minor disagreements. Of course, again, not everything ends at the supervisor's level. They need to learn how to report violations to HR for investigations. If something is bigger than them, they need to know what are the limits. How far is too far? At what point do I need to escalate to the manager, or at what point do I need to push this to HR? Again, it's important that they actually understand those things, that there is what they need to be able to handle, and there is what they can actually be able to escalate to the next level. And that also talks about resolving issues and discipline. I think that's what I have basically mentioned about. They need to be at a position to handle all those things so that they can be better supervisors or to be better to handle their roles. So in terms of responsibilities, the things we've talked about, managing workflow, making sure that things can easily flow and that work runs in a certain way in terms of what needs to get done now, what are we doing next quarter, what needs to be achieved. Training new hires, everybody new who comes in expects that the supervisor should orient them, not just for the work they are doing, but orient them in terms of the whole company, the company brand, the company values, the company structure. A supervisor should have that kind of knowledge. Creating team schedules, like you say, there are the people who need to go for leave when, who should get a sick off, who should not get, or such kind of things so that work gets done. Reporting to HR or senior management after they have evaluated the work that is getting done, that they have evaluated general performance, general behaviors, then they should be able to report that to the next person. Evaluating performance and giving feedback, who is doing well, who could be eligible for promotion, for example, who could be eligible for a different role. They have all that information, and it is their job to be able to tell that. That also comes with them being in a position to identify career advancement opportunities, because from where they sit, they know who is doing well and who is capable of doing far much more than exactly what they are doing right now. And then resolve issues and disputes, because they need to learn how to be neutral people, how to be mediators, so that when it comes to small minor disagreements, they should be able to handle that. When it comes to bigger violation of company policies, then they need to know at what point do they need to escalate, so that actually things can be able to be handled better. So that speaks to the responsibilities after you have talked about the functions of supervision. So before I go to the roles, I'm not sure if Lydia has stepped out or we should wait. Queen, any comments?
I think we can wait for her, or she comes back.
Okay.
What do you think, Queen?
No, she's around. She's on a phone call.
All right,
Okay.
let's just give her a minute to join us back. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's okay.
No, that's okay with me.
Okay.
All right, let's give her a minute to join us back.
Unless Queen, you have a comment before as we wait for her, or question?
I think my comment is, I think throughout this, we understand more of what a supervisor does, or even in more of details. Yeah.
Okay.
Or their role and their importance in an organization.
All right. Okay.
Thank
Lydia,
you
welcome back.
I hope we didn't lose you as much. Any
I had
comments?
Roswell call me.
Yes, because
calling me.
I thought you disappeared. Any comments around the responsibilities?
I was here, only that I didn't hear her question, but I heard her calling me.
Oh, okay. I was asking if there's any question around responsibilities or comments.
No, those are clear. Those are clear
Okay,
to me.
clear. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm glad when Queen says we now understand in depth the role of the supervisor, because sometimes we take them for granted, especially when you didn't do much of supervision, you landed in management. Sometimes we take supervisors for granted, but when you look into the details of what they do or what they are capable of doing, then you get to respect their role. So I'm glad we are getting to appreciate that. So let's look at the roles. After all those responsibilities that they have, what kind of roles are we actually looking at, or what kind of roles do we give them, or does their work and naturally give them? Because sometimes when they're given a job, it almost automatically comes with certain roles because of the exact things that you are doing. Even if we don't tell you that this is your role, the work that you're doing automatically gives you that role, and you find yourself being in a position where you need to be able to handle that. So one of the role of a supervisor is that they're actually educators, because like we have said, every new employee who comes in, it is the work of the supervisor. It doesn't matter how badly the rest of the people did their job, because sometimes somebody can come in through HR or through another department, and you're thinking maybe that whole introduction and induction should have been done there. But even if the other departments didn't do a good job, it is the supervisor's work to make sure that they do a good job in terms of orienting new employees. So as much as they might feel like the HR should have done it or the other manager should have done it, ultimately the supervisor is the biggest educator. They need to make sure that the new employees totally understand what they're getting themselves into and what the organization is all about. Of course, once in a while, again, processes and conditions change within an organization. Rarely does the senior manager go to the people on the ground to explain every change that happens. Chances are this change is going to be communicated through the supervisor. So again, the supervisor has a role to explain those changes, whether a change of processes or change of conditions, any change that happens within an organization, that communication is likely to go through the supervisor. And even if it comes directly from senior management to the people, if they have a question, they're going to ask their supervisor first. So we are told we need to work from home. What do you think, or what is going on? They go directly to the supervisor to ask those small questions. So that's what makes the supervisor an educator in this case. They also come up with policies and manuals and any other documentation that is developed. Chances are that the supervisor is involved in development of very many documents that happen When all these documents have been developed, again, you cannot just throw them to the people. You need to take people through those documents so that they actually understand what are these policies or manuals that have been developed and what are they all about. That's what makes the supervisor very important in terms of being an educator. And as they also discuss performance with the people, as they correct flaws, like we said, the supervisor understands the job better. So every time something goes wrong and they're giving feedback to the people, there's a chance to educate that person so that next time they can do better, or next time they don't have to make the same mistake. So generally, by the fact of somebody being a supervisor, they automatically become educators. The next thing that they automatically become is what we call a sponsor. In Kenya, we use that word not very nicely, so I would prefer it. Or could it be the same in your place, Lydia? Or it's just in Kenya?
What does a sponsor mean in Kigali?
Facilitator.
A facilitator.
I like that one.
I had a new one. They're now called blessers.
Oh. Okay, that's a totally new one. I think they're also blessers. Like you'll be looking for your blessings and they just come through this person.
I tell you.
Okay, so for that purpose, they can become blessers or facilitators, depends on what they are facilitating. So in short, again, if you're a supervisor, actually, you can become a sponsor in one way or the other. Why? Because you have a chance to provide opportunities for employees to showcase their skills and their strengths and their talents. Actually, I always say, sometimes when you're a supervisor, people's careers are in your hands. Because as you allocate duties, as you give people feedback, as you delegate, like we talk about delegation next week, you are developing that person. You're giving that person an opportunity to grow. You're giving that person an opportunity to showcase what they're capable of becoming. So in that case, we can call you a sponsor because you're giving somebody an opportunity. You're facilitating their growth in one way or the other, and you're becoming their blesser in one way or the other in terms of what they're capable of doing and developing them and growing them. So you're supporting employees in terms of career development and sometimes also in terms of movement. Like you said, you're recommending this person can move to this department, this person can actually be promoted to this other place, they can do better. So you're a sponsor in one way or the other because you're facilitating people's career development, you're facilitating people's growth, both through feedback, but also giving them an opportunity to showcase their skills, their strengths, and their talent, which is a pretty important thing. Again, you're also a coach. I'm sure you guys have already gone through coaching and mentoring.
Yes.
So a supervisor automatically becomes a coach because they need to, as they explain things, even if they are not structuring very heavy kind of structured coaching in how they communicate and how they check on people, they still do a bit of coaching. So they are trying to explain to people how things need to be done. They're encouraging them to become better, and helping them to plan the work that they do, to correct them in one way or the other, or just asking them general questions that can help people think and give general feedback. Like asking people, how are you doing generally? How do you think the team is doing? You get a lot of feedback from such kind of questions. How can things be improved? Just giving people some thought-provoking questions that can actually make them think on how things can be done better and eventually facilitate change within that operations department or within that project. So again, naturally, if you're a supervisor, you are expected to automatically become a coach. Nobody tells you these things, but you automatically become them when you are given that role. You also become a counsel or somebody who gives some sort of guidance when people have problems that affect their performance. And sometimes these problems are not work related, but as long as the problem an employee has is affecting their performance at work, then it becomes a concern to you because you need to get the work done. So you need to try and see what can be done to mitigate disciplinary action, because you don't wait until the person is totally non-performing, then you push them into disciplinary action if there's something that you could have actually done before. So it is the role of the supervisor to be supportive, to be positive, to be encouraging, to help the person actually improve. So eventually, at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that it is the employee role to solve the problem. You don't solve the problem on their behalf. It is their role to solve the problem, but you can facilitate solving that problem based on how you support them and how you encourage them through that process. So automatically, again, a supervisor becomes a counsel or a guide. But they also have a role in directing. What do we mean by that? Because they give instructions when there are performance issues, When things are not running the way they should be running, if you have educated somebody, you have coached them, you have counseled them, and things are still not working, at this point, now they cease being directors, and being counsels and coaches, they now become directors. They need to make recommendations and give clear consequences. They now have to become very firm, but also very calm in telling the person that they are not performing. And if you don't perform, these are the consequences that are actually going to follow. Of course, in this case, we expect them to also involve the HR department because the documentation also needs to happen. So apart from being coaching and counseling, which sounds like a very nice way of handling an employee, if things are not working, then they need to move into being directors. In this case, they need to clarify exactly what are the consequences or are the alternatives if we are not making any improvements here. They need to be very firm, but they also need to be very calm in that process and involve the HR just to make sure that things actually get done in the right way. So those are the roles of a supervisor. They automatically become educators. The moment you are appointed as a supervisor, you're an educator of the new employees and the ones who are still around in terms of any changes or any documents that are developed. You become a sponsor, like you have said, you are a facilitator and a blesser in terms of their career development and their career growth. You become a coach because you need to help people learn how to develop their wings and grow and think on their own. You counsel people when they have personal problems, as long as those problems are affecting performance. But remember, it's the employee's role to solve the problem. You only facilitate. But they also become directors because if performance is not improving and they have done all the educating, the coaching, the counseling, and nothing is moving, then it's time for them to put their foot on the ground and indicate what are the consequences if things don't really get well done. Those are the roles of the supervisor. So, and I think we already mentioned this when we are starting. To summarize supervision, but there are a few differences as much as there are a number of similarities. So a supervisor is the one who does the organizing of employee schedules. We have mentioned quite about that. They do a lot of trainings of new employees. They monitor work progress on a day-to-day basis. They monitor expenses and supplies. Remember when you talked about efficient use of resources. They oversee operations, logistics on a day-to-day basis, what is happening at an operational level. They're overseeing that. On the other side, the manager is at a higher level. So the manager is planning departmental activities, like we mentioned, probably with a number of projects. The manager is trying to evaluate work effectiveness, again, at a higher level, not necessarily on the operations level, but at a higher level. They are also managing expenses and resources, again, at a higher level, so you see a bit of similarities. They develop budgets and cost analysis. The supervisor might not necessarily be involved in the budgets or the cost analysis, but they need to monitor whatever budgets they have been given. The managers will do the recruiting, the hiring, and the evaluation of employees. The supervisor sometimes might not be involved in the recruiting or the hiring, but they need to train whoever they are given to work with. The managers are at a point where they're developing strategies at a very high level. Again, the supervisor is not developing strategies, but they're trying to oversee the operational logistics at every level that they work in. That brings us to the end of supervision. Okay. We looked at the roles and the similarities and the differences that we have between supervision and management. So before we go to management, any comments or questions? Anything around supervision that we may not have clarified or mentioned? Lydia?
Yes, what's the difference between managing expenses and resources and developing budgets and cost analysis?
Managing?
Expenses and resources for the manager role.
Oh, for the manager, yeah? And?
Yes, managing expenses and resources and then developing budgets and cost analysis. What's the difference?
Okay. I think one precedes the other because you first develop the budget. You need to have developed a budget first for right now. Probably you're coming up with a budget for 2021. That's at a very high level where you are. I'm sure you've been involved in budgets. You are looking at what have we spent on this year, what our projections are going into the next year, what is likely to change. That is all budgets and cost analysis because you're trying to come up with very high level numbers for you to be able to anticipate what kind of budget are we looking at in terms of next year. When next year happens, now you start managing the expenses. Make sure that you don't exceed the budget, or of course you don't mind if you spend less than the budget, but you want to look at the variance in terms of your budget and see, are you on the negative or are you on the positive? So it's like I said, one precedes the other. You start by developing budgets, doing cost analysis so that you come up with a budget. Then when the season or whatever whatever season you're planning for, a quarter or a year starts, then you start managing expenses and resources to make sure that you don't exceed the budget that you had actually planned to spend on. And of course, also based on the money that you're receiving in terms of revenue, because if revenue goes down, again, you need to manage expenses more, even if you had budgeted and the money doesn't come in, again, you can't spend what you don't have. So one precedes the other.
True.
Make sense, Lydia?
Yes.
Okay.
Does.
Anything else? When you're good?
She's
good. Okay. So that takes us, before we take a break, we have like 3 minutes. I would want us to think, all right, I could give you this to think through the break. I think that would work, Purity.
Yes. Yes.
In terms of management versus leadership, what's your thoughts in terms of differences or similarities, or what comes to mind in terms of management and leadership? Is it one and the same thing? Are they different things? What exactly are they? What are your thoughts around management and leadership? Are you guys seated together in the office?
I think they're seated separate.
Or you're seated separately? Or you want everybody to think on their own?
They can stretch and go to the other person's desk.
Yes, you can stretch. We have around 7 minutes to 5, I think.
Yes, 7 minutes
Yes,
to
so
5.
Yeah, so we can take the 7 minutes. You guys think through what are the differences or what are similarities, or generally what do you think in terms of what a manager should do, what a leader should do, or what is management, what is leadership. Then we can meet at exactly 5. That's okay, Purity?
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. 4 p.m. Kigali time.
Oh yeah, 4 p.m. Sorry. Yes, Lydia, we meet at 4 p.m.
Okay.
Kenyans, we are ahead of things.
Yes. Sawa.
So let's meet at 4 p.m. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Disputed you, yes.
Not all managers
Not all managers can be leaders.
And then you continued and said,
Yes. That all leaders can be managers.
that is what I'm disagreeing with, because
Why?
you see, like managers are really like people oriented, and I feel like sometimes leaders forget there is work that needs to be done, and that is where the manager role comes in. Like you can't be pulling people this vision, you're just talking about the vision all the time. You'll need someone who is a manager to come and now start working and acting on the vision. So I don't agree on both. Like managers not all managers are leaders. Also, not all leaders are managers.
Are managers, okay.
Yes.
But does it mean it's impossible for somebody to be a leader and a manager?
No, it's not impossible.
Okay.
There are very few people who have
It's
a
not
blend of
impossible.
both. Yes.
Okay. I think that's the underlying point. The underlying point is that they are different, and I'm glad Lydia has been brought into that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I think what Purity is trying to clarify is that you need both.
Yes.
You can't all be leading or all be managing. You need to meet at a certain point. And the reason why we discuss both when you're talking about, when you're looking at a work environment, why we these days always say leadership and management. We rarely say it's a leadership course or it's a management course. Unless somebody has been a manager and you want them to learn how to be a leader. So we send them for leadership course. Again, school teaches a lot of management, but rarely does school teach leadership. So many a times when you're sending people for senior management growth, that's why we send them mostly for leadership, because a lot of management is taught in school. And even when you're inducted into what we call leadership, which is again misuse of that word, when you're promoted to a higher position, if I may call it that way, people induct you very well in the work side of it, the management side of it, but sometimes they might not induct you on the leadership side of it. So many times that's why you see people being sent into the leadership kind of program. But when you're looking at generally developing people who are in higher positions, you're looking at both leadership and management, because both are needed at the same time. But sometimes, again, naturally you find yourself falling on one side. You're either naturally or by default a leader, or you're by default a manager. And sometimes it's you don't actually realize it unless you really check yourself. Chances are you are at default on one side of either being a manager or being a leader. The moment you realize that and you realize there is a difference, now you can consciously remind yourself to put in what it is that you actually don't naturally have. I think we have been able to look at it from that perspective. Management has a lot to do with controlling, while leadership has a lot to do with the influence side of it. By the end of the day, you need both. And organizations are not going to hire some people to do management and then hire some people to do leadership. The moment they give you a position, they expect you to be able to have both. And I think, again, generally for your purposes of good production, you need both. So it's good that you learn both sides of the coin. It becomes pretty important for you. To cement that, I had wanted to play something short here, just like 4 minutes. I hope it agrees. If it refuses, then we are hooked. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
And you can hear it?
The sound is not there.
No sound? Oh, yes. Now?
Plate. The sound is not there. Have you checked share sound on your when you're sharing the screen?
I think I missed something.
Just stop sharing. Then when you go to share screen, the pop-up window there's on your bottom left, you've seen.
The share sound, yes, I missed that.
Yes, all right.
Thank you. Let me know now.
Okay, here's the tip, and then I'm going to back up and tell you why I think it's important.
Let me start.
The tip. Okay, here's the tip, and then I'm going to back up and tell you why I think it's important. The tip. Be absolutely crystal clear in your own mind about the difference between leadership and management, and make sure the people around you are also crystal clear about that difference. Now, let me back up. Management is fundamentally a set of processes, the most core of which are planning, budgeting, organizing, staffing, controlling, and problem solving. And what management does is to take a system, an organization of people and technology, and make it function the way it was designed to function, producing a good or a service on time, on budget, absolutely the way it was designed to work. What leadership is it's a set of processes involving creating a vision of the future and a strategy for getting there, for communicating that out to people in a way that gets them to buy into it, and then creating an environment that motivates those people, that inspires those people to want to make that vision a reality. And what leadership does is it creates, in a sense, the systems that managers manage, or it takes them and it changes them in some fundamental ways to adapt to changes outside an organization, to grab opportunities, to duck hazards, to raise standards. Both are obviously very important, but if you don't get it clear what each is, you run into these problems. Here's the most typical. All of a sudden, something happens in a company's environment. Basically, the most common is the speed of change goes up. And somebody notices this, and it starts affecting, for example, their financials. And they come back and they say, we've got to do something about this, and one aspect is clearly we need more and better leadership at the top or at the top and right below the top. And those people really try hard to beat away at that. But they think that management is leadership. So what they work at is the planning stuff, the budgeting stuff, the organizing stuff. And at a certain point, you can literally become overmanaged and underled. And it's almost impossible, unless you've got a monopoly, to be overmanaged and underled and do well in the kind of world that we're living in today. I see it in performance appraisal forms. People are trying, the leadership word is coming up more. There it is in the performance appraisal. And I look at the items underneath it, half of them are management items. So because of the lack of clarity, as they try to cram that into the system, into succession planning, into recruiting, what they're in reality doing is promoting more people who are good at management, bringing in more talent that has management potential, not leadership potential. And they're not solving the real leadership problem that can help them deal with this increasingly turbulent, changing environment. You got to understand the differences, and the people around you need to understand them. And if you don't, you get yourself into trouble.
Okay, thank you very much. Does it make sense now, Lydia?
So much.
Sorry?
So much. It makes so much sense.
Now it makes so much sense. What more could you have picked from that explanation?
That,
What is more clarified now?
yes, that leadership creates a sense in the system the managers manage. I liked that.
Say it again. I think I might borrow it also.
That leadership creates a sense in the system the managers manage.
Thank you very much. I think speaking that one line summarizes almost everything.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so whatever managers are trying to manage, then the leaders are able to make sense out of it and look at the bigger picture. Thank you so much for that. I think everybody gets what makes sense to them. That one line has defined everything for Lydia. She will never go back on that confusion again. I like that. Queen, anything you picked?
I think Lydia just summarized everything. I'm good.
She has picked the best line of them all and then
I
crashed. Now she's sounding like she's the one who knew and you're the one who had explained it to her.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything, Purity, you want to add before I go back to my slides?
I think what he has said is very important.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like what for me it means is sometimes we need to know when to pull the leadership card and also when to pull the management card, because I know with leaders, people really love leaders, but sometimes you need the rough manager to get the work done. So I think for people in leadership or management positions, they just need to know today I'm the leader, tomorrow business manager.
Yes. So I think that's the first thing is noting that they're actually different, because I think for most ways that they don't even know there's a difference.
Yes.
Which is the sad part. So the moment you realize there's a difference, then it's to ask yourself, at what point do I become who? Because you need both of them at any one point. Like we said, organizations are not going to hire two people to do the two different jobs. So you need you need to figure out how to get that done. And sometimes when you're in a position where you are at liberty to hire your assistant, I always say, if you're a default leader, hire a default manager as your assistant.
Yeah.
If you're a default manager, hire a default leader. As an assistant, not necessarily because you can't be able to juggle both, but because naturally as human beings, you have a lot of defaults that you have to intentionally remind yourself. When you have somebody who is your opposite on that default, it becomes far much easier for you to manage. But basic line is we need both, but you also need to know the differences. Like you're saying, sometimes you keep telling people you need to get leadership skills, but what we mean actually is management skills. So we need to be able to differentiate those two things. And because that has summarized a lot of things, so then my discussion becomes very easy. Just to summarize what he has said. In terms of management, like he has said, we are looking at around 4 things. I know he has added something to do with budgeting, which is part of controlling resources. So as managers, they are responsible for supervising. I think Quinn mentioned that. Their managers have supervisors below them. They also have a role in supervising the organization's resources so that it meets its goals. When you talk about resources, what we are looking at, they are looking at planning those resources, organizing, leading, and controlling. And again, you realize the word leading is also in there. Basically, to remind you that as a manager, you have a role to lead as well. So it doesn't exempt you from being a leader. So you plan, you organize, you lead, you control. When it comes to controlling, we have the budgeting. There are any resources that you actually need to control for the organization. Those are the major roles that a manager is expected to do. And I'm sure in the last few sessions, you guys have looked at planning and organizing. So we mentioned quite a bit of leading today. And next week, you're going to look at controlling as you're looking at delegation. That's why I said it makes our discussion pretty easy, because much of what you are mentioning here has already been mentioned. It's just to tell you this is what management entails. So basically the things you guys have been looking at previously in terms of planning, organizing, what you are looking at in terms of controlling, coordinating, directing, delegating, those are management roles. So if you are purely a manager, those are the things that you do. But again, like you said, the manager of today needs to add the leading part so that you become a manager and a leader at the same time. So what are the things that you're managing? What are these things that you're planning, organizing, leading, controlling? They are basically human resources and many other resources. So it's not just about the people. You are organizing or managing people, the people that you have, performance management, performance reviews, all those setting goals, all those things you do about the people. You're managing skills that the people have, like we said, now that you're a sponsor in terms of what people can become into the future and what resources they're bringing into the organization and how those skills are well utilized. So you're looking at the skills. You're managing materials. We have lots of materials within the organization, like saying as simple as a paper to as complicated as the biggest things you have in that organization. You have machineries from vehicles to a printer to the smallest of things. You have information, because there's a lot of information that is passed from the people to the management, from the management to the people, from the clients. Like now those clients who are walking in, they are bringing in information. So you have a lot of that managing to do. And you have finances as well. You have budgets to run that also needs to be taken care of. So when you're thinking management and you're thinking in terms of planning, organizing, controlling human in terms of the people and other resources, you're looking at other resources such as skills, materials, machinery, information, and sometimes even finances. Why are you doing this? Is because you want to achieve what we said, effectiveness and efficiency of the organizational goals. So whichever way you achieve the organization goals, you want to make sure that it is done efficiently and it is done effectively. Lydia, what is the difference between those two words? Now that I've realized your English is very good.
Sorry? What is the biggest?
The difference between efficiency and effectiveness. When we say that what the manager is trying to do is making sure that the goals of the organizations are achieved efficiently and effectively. What's the difference between the two? Yes. Is it possible to be effective and not efficient, or efficient and not effective?
Yes. The efficiency, okay, I might confuse the two, but I know one is
you will say that you will reorganize.
And another is in terms of output, you know. One is in terms of cost, the other is in terms of output. Effectiveness is output. And then efficiency is cost, minding the cost, like the cost of the system is worth it. Yes.
Queen, want to add anything?
Efficiency and effectiveness. I was Purity just laughed.
And now you're thinking Lydia is wrong.
No,
Oh, no,
not
no,
at
no.
all, not at all. I think what you said is true. And just to add on efficiency, it's about maximization of resources.
Mhm.
And then effectiveness is, it's, no, not the output, it's the level at which you are producing something. Like you have used the maximum, the required resources as efficient, and effectiveness is that degree of output that is produced out of those resources that were used. I think.
Yes, I think you both summarized it pretty well. I like the way Lydia has mastered how to put at it. One is quality, then one is cost. That's what you do in an exam. When you see the exam, you first write quality and cost. Then you ask yourself, okay, so which one is which?
Yes.
The data is that. But eventually, I think it comes down to what you guys have said. So we are looking at the output, and you're also looking at how well you're using the resources that you have. And I think I mentioned that earlier. So in terms of the management or the manager, Lydia, are you okay? Or you are confirming that you have said the right things?
Okay. She's celebrating.
Yes. Oh, she's celebrating that she's right. Yes, if it was an exam, you would have hacked it. By just saying quality, cost, and you're good to go. Yes. So we are saying that whatever roles the manager is doing in terms of planning, organizing, controlling, at the end of the day, what you're looking at is to make sure that they achieve the organizational goals in an effective and efficient way. So those 4 functions you are looking at, eventually, you want to achieve the goals in an efficient and in an effective way. So when you're looking at organization performance, or when you're looking at performance of managers, we are looking at how well were they able to execute those 4 functions, how well is defined by efficiency and their effectiveness. And like we say, the efficiency is about how well or productively the resources were used to achieve. So we are looking at the cost side of it. How well did you use the resources that you have for you to be able to achieve whatever it is that you achieved? Because you can achieve a goal, but you have used too much resources. If you are given a budget of 1 million, you have achieved the goal, yes, but you used 2 or 3 million. Really, you are not efficient. You achieved whatever the department was supposed to, but instead of using 2 staff, you used 5 staff. That is not efficiency because you used too much resource to achieve a goal. So in short, you're saying you're not just looking at the end goal. You're not just looking at the fact that you achieved the goal that had been set. You want to make sure that you actually productively use the resources that you have and use them very well without underutilizing or overutilizing the resources that are available. But even as you use the resources pretty well, the effective side of it is the quality of the output that you come up with. Because if you can use resources very well, but come up with a very wrong thing, well, maybe you had not even set the right goal from the beginning. So we are looking at the appropriateness of the goals that you have been pursuing and the degree to which it was achieved, like Queen put it. It's also the degree to which you achieved it. Because you can come and say you had given me a budget of 1 million, I used 500,000, but what did you achieve? How well was whatever you achieved? Is it the quality that we were looking at? Is that the exact goal that we actually expected? So by the end of the day, as a manager, we are rating you from both perspectives. How productively you use the resources that you have in terms of cost mostly, and eventually the quality of goal that you achieved at the end of it all. Was it the kind of goal that you were looking at? Is it the appropriate goal even for the organization? Because sometimes you can spend a lot of time and energy chasing the wrong goal, and you have wasted so much, and you're here telling us the way you used resources very well, but you used the resources to achieve what? If you achieve the wrong goal, you did not help the situation. So you need to have both. Use the resources well to achieve the correct goal. In that case, you are efficient and you are effective at the same time. Like I said, I know you guys talked a lot about planning, so I can only mention it at a very high level in like 5 minutes. And I think we also mentioned this when you're looking at performance management. So planning starts at a very high level for you to come up with the organizational goals and objectives. You're starting from your mission statement, who you are and what you value. You're looking at the vision statement, what you want to become. You're looking at the overall strategy, like the 5-year strategy of what you want to do, and then breaking that down into the goals and the objectives of the organization. So you're trying to harmonize the organization's goals so that you are looking at it from the beginning. You cannot have goals that do not match your vision or the mission of the organization. Again, this is at a very high level, but still that's where planning starts. When it doesn't happen at your level, we expect that happens somewhere. Before the 5-year strategy happens, the planning starts at that level of the vision, the strategy, 5-year strategy, then down to the goals of the company or the organization. So we have different levels of planning, again, based on the different levels of management. So we have the strategic plans that happens at a high level, like I've mentioned. They are the long range objectives. You're looking at the overall strategy for the firm's mission. So we are looking forward in terms of 2 to 10 years ahead, pretty far. We are looking at how sustainable are we in this business. In the next 5-10 years, are we still valid to be in this business? Are we thinking of diversifying to something totally different? Is there new projects that we need to start? Is there anything new that we need to bring in? We need to think of mergers and acquisitions, because maybe in the next 5 years, things are likely to change so much we might not survive on our own. There's this person threatening us and we need to acquire them to make things easier for us. So these are at a very high level of planning at a strategic level. Then you have the operational plans. This is probably where you would fall mostly. At the operational level, what are we before operational, sorry, there's a tactical plan. Tactical plan, I think, is where you would fall mostly, because you're looking at the short range implementation of the high level strategy, the 1 year or less, because the high level strategy is 2 years going to 10 years. Now the tactical bit is looking at a shorter range, like 1 year or less. So you are thinking the environmental change. You are thinking now that COVID has happened, what will happen? You're looking at who is our competitor, what are they doing, what can we do differently? So you are thinking just within the environment that you have. And so you are thinking periodically, what can we change this quarter? What can we change this year? So you are looking at the short range of it in terms of this year or the next quarter. So those are the tactical plans to help you achieve the bigger goal. And then you have the operational plans that probably are happening at the supervisor and the individual subordinates level. So you are thinking short term is that what are the actions, the things they wake up to on a daily basis? The individuals, the departments, the small groups that you have, that is at high level planning. So they're thinking in terms of 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, basically what they wake up to every day for them to be able to achieve the tactical plans that you guys had planned for that 1 year. So those are the 3 main levels of planning. At the strategic level, which is very high in terms of the long term. Then we have the tactical in terms of the short range, 1 year or less. Looking at the environment around you, mostly that's what you're doing at middle management. Then you have the operational plans, which are very short term in terms of what they wake up to on a daily basis, weekly basis, or monthly basis, very, very short term. But apart from those 3 high levels, we also have the crisis kind of management or planning. You're thinking in terms of potential disasters. What exactly do you need to think about? COVID happens or any other big thing that happens. How do you guys survive? How do we keep going on? So apart from thinking again, strategy, tactical, operations, you also need to think in terms of crisis. If something goes wrong, because things sometimes go wrong, what exactly can we be able to do? What kind of continuity would we have? Do we look out tomorrow and you can't come to the office? How do we continue working? So those are the kind of planning that also happens at the back of it. Like I said, I wouldn't dwell on it because I know you guys talked a lot about it on Wednesday. So at top management, we are looking at strategic planning. At middle management, we are looking at tactical planning. At the first line, which is the supervisors that we mentioned as first line of management, then they are dealing with the operations, operational planning. So that's just a highlight in terms of planning at a very high level. Top management will do the strategic, middle management will do the tactical planning to try and implement the strategy. And the first line of management, who are the supervisors, will do the operational planning to try and implement the tactical planning on their day-to-day basis. And that's a summary of basically just the same. Top management, middle management, and then first line managers. What every person is trying to do to make sure that it happens. So the top managers will set the high level objectives, scan the bigger environment and make some plans. The middle managers will try to allocate resources based on the budget that they have, oversee what the first line managers are doing, report to top management and develop some implementation activities. The first line managers or the supervisors will try and coordinate the daily activities, supervise the employees, report to middle management, and get involved on a day-to-day operations. So that's how, at a bigger high level, management or planning will happen in that function. So then we have controlling. Again, I'll not go into the details because we'll talk about controlling, I think, on Monday. But controlling at a high level is just evaluating and correcting what is not going right. So you measure performance, you compare against the standards, you find out what is not working, you investigate why it is not working, and then you take corrective action. So in terms of controlling, as much as you're controlling people and other resources, I think the biggest controlling you do is in terms of performance. Because as you look at performance, you can also be able to say, is there something else in the environment that is not working? We have a process problem, we have a service problem. All those things you can be able to tell when you are controlling. So you need to continuously measure performance, compare against the standards that have been set, see what is not working, find out why it is not working, and then take corrective action. So like I said, most of those things you guys covered planning, you covered organizing, leading is what we are mentioning, controlling we will talk about on Monday. By looking at that table, it tells you something, that the 4 functions of management that we have talked about sometimes differ based on the level that you are in. It is not in every level that you're going to require the same amount of role or in terms of function. So that table can be able to tell you something. Who wants to interpret for us that table? Lydia or Queen, want to interpret for us that table? What do you think that table is telling us? When you look at planning in terms of the 3 levels, organizing in terms of the 3 levels, leading in terms of the 3 levels, controlling in terms of the 3 levels.
I think what the table is telling me, it's the level of participation of managerial levels, functions on those 4 tasks, managerial tasks. Because if you can, yeah, that's what, because the colors are different and the way it's divided, it shows the level of leading or participating. Yeah.
Okay. If you picked one of the function, for example, you picked planning, what does it tell you about planning in the 3 levels?
Experience.
Yes, if for planning, just like you just said before, planning is the strategic planning is for the top managers, where they are putting in place the vision and the mission of the company.
Yes.
So if you can see, planning has a bigger role for the top managers than first line managers.
Thank you very much. That's exactly the interpretation I was looking at.
Yeah,
Queen,
totally.
yes. Queen is feeling like
It's Patrick. He's on a call. I can hear him here.
Oh, okay.
He's shouting.
Patrick always comes late.
And then he starts shouting at people. Okay, tell him we can hear what he is telling people. Lydia, you want to give us an explanation of the other 3? As Patrick was quiet.
It was just the addition to what Queen had explained. Like the amount of time spent on different tasks is different for the different managers. For the top managers and the middle managers, first line managers, they spend different times or different amount of time for the tasks like planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. You'll find that for first line managers, they do more of the leadership tasks than planning. And then the top managers, they do more of controlling than the first line managers. And then the middle managers, they do more of leading than controlling.
Okay, I think that's basically what we are looking at, that you need to understand that sometimes based on the level that you are in, you may not apply all the 3 at the same level. For example, the first line managers, like we say, deal a lot with the people doing the work, so they need to do a lot of leading. They need to do a lot of influencing and motivating people to get the job done. So because they're dealing one-on-one with more people compared to the top managers who are not dealing so much with the people doing the work. And when it comes to planning, like Queen has said, we have a lot of planning happening at the high level, and at the lower level is more of implementing. So top managers do a lot of the planning bits. If they're doing more of the planning bits, then they probably do a lot of controlling because they are taking the goals that they set. How is it going against the standards that we are actually producing? So that's the kind of understanding I was basically looking at, that you have those different levels and they apply differently based on the level that you're in terms of management. So as we looked at in terms of supervision, then again at management, we have different roles. First role you might have is what you call the decisional role. What do you mean? That you have a lot of decisions that you actually make or you are expected to make. And a decisional role, so what am I looking at? First of all, you are an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, like we call it. You need to think in terms of new projects or new programs that can be initiated or new things that can actually be done within the role that you are in. So as much as you might not be starting a whole new business, but internally, you need to think in terms of new projects or new programs that can be run. You're also a disturbance handler. You manage a lot of unexpected events or crises, like those clients who are walking in on you and they need you to make a decision or do something about it. So you're handling a lot of that. You're a resource allocator because you assign resources and between functions, divisions, set budgets for other managers or for the supervisors. So you do a lot of resource allocation, which again is a decision that you make. You're also a negotiator because you try to reach agreements between other managers, the staff that you work with, the customers, and anybody else who you are involved or you work with. You do a lot of negotiations with them. So in terms of decisional roles, you're an entrepreneur. In terms of projects, you're a disturbance handler. In terms of managing unexpected events, you're a resource allocator. In terms of assigning resources, and you're a negotiator in terms of reaching agreements between the people that you actually work with. You also have an interpersonal role. Interpersonal roles, what are you? You are a figurehead and what it is seeking to achieve. Like I said earlier, if you work for an organization, I always say you carry their brand. Whether people think it's good or bad, you carry that brand and you have to defend it wherever you go. So you cannot be working in an organization that you can't stand for because you are their figurehead. You symbolize their mission and their vision. So wherever you go, you have to speak in their language. You are a leader because you train, you counsel, you mentor to make sure that you get very high performance. And you act as a liaison because you coordinate and link activities between the people that you work with, between the customers and the organization, between other organizations and your organization. So you do a lot in terms of making sure that you liaise different people. So you have a role in terms of interpersonal skills or interpersonal relationships, as a figurehead to represent the organization, as a leader to mentor, to counsel and coach your employees, and as a liaison to coordinate activities between different people that you work with internally and externally. Then you also have an informational role. Like we said, you carry a lot of information, whether as a supervisor or a manager, at whichever position you are in, you have a lot of information that you carry. What do you do with that information? You need to monitor, analyze information both internally and externally because you receive a lot of information. Internally from your staff and you need to do something about it. Externally from other people, from clients, from any other individual out there, and you need to do something about it. Apart from monitoring, you are a disseminator. Like we said, you give feedback to management, you pass directions or information to the subordinates that you work with. So you're a disseminator of information. You transmit information to influence the attitudes and the behavior of employees. And that counts a lot because the information you give them and how you give them determines how well they're going to work. But you're also a spokesperson because you use the information that you have to positively influence the people within the organization and outside the organization are going to respond to your organization. How you talk to clients determines how they're going to engage with the organization. How you talk to employees determines how they're going to be able to work well within that organization. So in terms of informational roles, you monitor the information, you disseminate information, but you're also a spokesperson. You speak on behalf of that organization. And like I said, as a manager, you carry the organization's brand and you speak on behalf of that organization. In summary, in terms of skills, as a manager, like you said, leadership counts. You must have leadership skills. You need technical expertise, but like we said, depends on which level you are in. We are going to look at that shortly. You have conceptual skills, or just being able to look at things from a broader perspective at a strategic level. You need analytical skills, and you need human relations skills. So again, as a manager, you need different skills that you need to be able to juggle. So looking at that picture or image again, just give it a second and see if it makes sense to you. And try to interpret it. It's called a CAT 3-skill approach. It looks at the 3 major skills that you need in management: conceptual skills, technical skills, and human skills. Who wants to read for us or explain to us what that picture is trying to explain? Does it make sense by looking at it or reading through it?
I want Purity to read out for us.
Okay. Apparently, Purity has not been following, so they want to check.
No, I'm following.
And why is Lydia so throwing it at you?
Actually, I'm trying to figure out like how that photo looks like.
Oh, you're trying to understand who are these people in blue and purple.
Yes. But
Okay,
Same here.
oh, okay, let's deal with the words and not the colors.
especially the last one, I was like, what are they doing?
They have hit the head and they are overwhelmed.
Yes. So CAT's 3-skill approach. The first one is conceptual. The middle part technical. The last part human. So for conceptual skills, I believe that's what falls under supervisory, right?
No, I'm waiting for you to explain what you can see.
Okay. Oh, okay. Now I think I get what you're saying. Because like under supervisory, technical is high, human is high, then conceptual is low. Like to mean, like for supervisors, they'll need more technical skills, more human interaction, because they're the people like on the ground. Whereas conceptual skills like ideation, it's not really them who comes with the idea or the concept or the vision. That's what I understand for supervisory.
Yes, that's true.
Then for middle management, technical skills medium, supervisory skills, conceptual skills medium, then human skills high. What I want to also think here, like the fact like middle management don't interact with these employees on a day-to-day basis. But I don't know why the technical skills are low, are medium. I would expect maybe technical skills to be high as well. I don't know, and also maybe low human skills. That one I don't understand. Let's go to top management. Technical skills low, human skills high, conceptual skills high. Okay. For technical, I agree. Human, maybe medium. Conceptual, totally agree, high.
Okay.
Yes.
Lydia, you want to add anything?
Just first help me understand human skills.
Okay. I think human skill in this case, we are looking at the interpersonal skills.
Oh.
Not necessarily leadership, but interpersonal skills, just your ability to communicate and work with people. Or what we call soft skills. I think in short language is what we call soft skills, communication, emotional intelligence, that kind of things, yes.
Okay. Now the pictures make sense to me, where Purity got lost on middle management.
Yeah.
Yes, the middle manager should at least have some technical skills. Maybe they might not be to the level of the first line manager, like the supervisor, but at least they should know. He should know what is going to be done technically, and then he should be able to interact like with the supervisors, because and also maybe go down to the juniors, however much is a manager. So you should have those interpersonal skills or the human skills. The conceptual skills, of course, you can't have high skills as the top managers, because the top managers are the people that came up with the objectives and the goals of the organization. So this middle manager is more or less in the transition process of learning the system. So I agree that you should have conceptual skills as medium.
Okay. Queen, anything?
I have a question.
Yep.
Top
Sorry.
managers,
Mhm.
conceptual skills is high. That means they set up or they come up with a strategic plan for,
Yes.
like you said, 5 to 10 years for the organization.
Mhm.
Now, who are the ones who put in place goals for on departments?
Yes.
That is my question.
Oh, it sounded like a comment than a question.
Actually, I thought it's a comment. Come again.
No,
Hello.
it's a question because then strategic. Hello. Yeah,
Yeah, we can hear you.
said top managers come up with strategic plan for a company for 5 to 10 years. Vision, mission, you name it. Now, in order to understand the conceptual skills medium for middle managers, my question would be, who come up with the departmental goals, or let's say KPIs?
Purity, you want to respond?
Yes. I think you are asking about KPIs, right?
About the departments.
The departmental ones.
The departmental goals.
Normally, when I look at like performance management, I see like the company has a vision or the strategy up here. So the person who sits in the role of like the director is in charge of that vision, the strategy. Then the next level, who are managers, now what we call like top level managers, they are divided that vision. Like if it's vision to maybe expansion, open up in another 5 countries in the next 10 years, someone who's in charge of finance, someone who's in charge of HR. You see, those are top management. That is what I would think. Then the next level is middle level management. So you see the finance director will divide his vision across the team that he has at this middle level management. So you see at departmental level, which I think is middle level management, they get the KPIs from the manager, the top management. Then it's broken down. Then once the middle level managers get the instructions, they break it down further. So for me, KPIs is not a one-person job who is at the top. I get my roles. Let me give you an example, a practical one. Maybe the organization goal is to sell 1 million, to sell products worth 1 million. That's an example. So this one comes to maybe the head of sales, for example. So the head of sales has 4 sales executives below him. What will he do? He will take the 1 million divided by 4, give each sales executive a goal of 250,000, for example. Then this sales executive has maybe 10 sales representative under her or him. So you see, this sales executive will take the 25,000 to 50,000 goal and divide it into 10, giving each representative 25,000 of a goal. You see, as the head of sales, you can't give the representative the KPI. It will have to come from the executives. is that example practical?
It's practical. Now I understand how the conceptual skills is medium. That means for the medium management, it's
Yes.
more of implementing what has been said by the top management.
Yes.
And also for them to divide them for
To
supervisors.
the lower people, yes, not who we call supervisors.
Yeah, to the lower
yes.
people.
Yes.
Okay. Well, great discussion. Now you have said everything I should have said. That's all I needed. I needed you guys to talk on my behalf. So you have explained to yourself and asked yourself the questions and answered yourself. That is coaching, by the way, where you make people, you ask people one question, then they brainstorm, they confuse themselves, and they come up with the answers themselves. So basically, that's all I needed you guys to understand that, again, the three skills apply differently at the three levels. So at supervisory level, like you said, you're dealing with the people. I said that from the beginning. You are interacting with the work, so you must understand the work. That's very high technical skills. You don't come up with the big ideas of the strategy, so you don't need very high conceptual, so very low conceptual skills. Human skills are needed wherever you go, irrespective of the level that you are in. Even if you're only dealing with one human being, you need to be able to relate with other human beings. And that's why these days we say soft skills are no longer soft skills, they are now essential skills.
Yeah.
The emotional intelligence, your communication, all those things have become essential skills. So you need them across the board. For middle management, like you said, it's more of implementation. So they don't need very high conceptual skills, but at that point, you need to start understanding where the goals are coming from. You need good human skills. Technical skills, not very high, but you still need to understand what is happening on the ground. But you don't need to be there one-on-one getting the job done. At top management, of course, now you're not dealing with the technical skills. I don't need to be a HR person to run a HR firm. I don't need to be a doctor to be a CEO of a hospital. That's what you're trying to say. I don't need to have the technical skills for me to be in the top management of that organization. So all I need now is the conceptual skills. I need to think strategy. I need to think ideas. I need to think vision. So at that point, I don't need the technical skills. But of course, I'm also dealing with human beings around me. So human skills become pretty important. I think that kind of summarizes that whole thing. So I'll have to borrow your 10 minutes because I have allowed you to talk a lot. so that I summarize leadership. Lydia, I hope that's okay.
Yes. Lydia.
Okay. She's on mute, but I can see the non-verbal. Yes. Okay,
the non-verbal cues.
Yes, I can see the non-verbal cues. So they're telling me she's okay to go for another like 10 minutes. So that we summarize leadership. We have summarized management in terms of the 4 functions. And I think we say the only function that we might not come back to is leadership. We look at delegation, we look at controlling, we look at coordination on Monday, and you guys already looked at planning and organizing. So the only thing that might not come back is leadership. And I think we already mentioned what it is when you're trying to look at the difference. Like Quinn talked about it, it's influencing people. It is making sure that actually people can work willingly. The word here is willingly, influencing people so that they can strive willingly towards achievement of the group goals or the company goals. Because again, if you have to use power every day, if you have to push people every day, it's not manageable in the long term. So that's why a bit of leadership helps. To just be able to influence people so that once in a while they can work without you pushing them, and they can work willingly towards the company goals. This again, you guys mentioned when you are starting from the beginning. Management, you are thinking about planning, organizing, which includes staffing, coordinating, and controlling. On the other side, we are looking at leadership, which looks at influencing, motivating, inspiring, creating, mentoring. It's looking at more of the people side of things and the vision side of things. When management is looking at the resources that we have, how are we using them, the policies, the rules, and the procedures. In between, of course, you need human skills like communication, problem solving, decision making. So you have to bridge the two. So when you're looking at being a leader and a manager at the same time, we are looking at being able to merge that. Being able to merge the planning, organizing, coordinating, controlling with the influencing, motivating, inspiring, mentoring, and in between having the human skills in terms of communicating, problem solving, decision making, and all that. Again, you guys were able to crack that from the beginning. So management is instructing when leadership is influencing. Instead of telling people do this, you try to influence them to do it. In management, you solve problems. You decide this is the solution that we need to have. In leadership, you try to partner to solve problems. So you try to talk to the people so that you come up with a solution together. In management, you direct and control, like you said, that's what we'll be talking about on Monday. In leadership, you try to teach and engage. Instead of controlling, you try to teach and engage them to get the job done. Management, you see people as they are. So I think you are lazy, you are lazy. Your skill, you don't have this skill, you don't have it. In leadership, you try to develop people so that you can try and make them become better than they actually are. So you believe in their ability to become better than they are. In management, you request people to do things. In leadership, you empower people to do things. So you give them the responsibility and the authority so that they can actually improve. In management, you operate and maintain. That's why we talk about rules, policies, and procedures, because you want things done in a certain way. In leadership, you try to improve. You break some rules to see if things can actually become better. And that's why most people will always say that in management, you push people to get things done. In leadership, you pull. You influence people, you inspire them so that they can actually be able to follow you in that direction. What are some of the leadership attributes that we are looking at? As much as we are looking at the attributes in management, what are some of the attributes we are looking at in terms of leadership? In leadership, you have to be a role model. You cannot inspire people to do things that you don't do. So you say you lead by example, you live the values. You lead by example, demonstrate what you want people to practice, demonstrate integrity, demonstrate support, demonstrate respect, show energy in the work that you do, keep learning. So whatever values that you want people to demonstrate, whatever values you want your team to be, then you be that. So you become a role model. You live the values and you lead by example. So that's how you inspire people, so that when people look at you, they want to be you, or they want to do things because you do them. So in that case, you influence them. You are an inspirer because you create a vision, like Purity mentioned. You create a vision and you set the direction. Then you direct their emotions. Based on how you communicate that vision, you make it look good. You make them see how things will be in the next 5 years and how their jobs will improve, how the environment will look good, how much money they will earn. So just being able to direct their emotions and inspire their vision, then they are willing to follow you. You inspire them by how you communicate with them, and you encourage them to experiment and take risks because they feel inspired. When they think about the Q sourcing they are going to see in the next 5 years, they're thinking, I want to stay here and I want to make things happen, because you have inspired them to be that. You're also an enabler because you help people to grow. Like you said, you don't just instruct people, you empower them. You want them to grow. You want them to become better than they are. So you build team, you build people, you build more leaders, you leverage on diversity. So when you look at people's differences, you don't see them as differences. You see on what they can all be able to bring on the table. So you encourage everybody to be the best that they can actually be. So you enable people to become better. But that does not mean that you forget results. Even as a leader, you need to be an achiever. You focus on results and be persistent on them so that people know what is expected of them. If this is what we set to achieve, every other day you are reminding them this is where we are going, this is how we are doing, and we need to get there. So persistently focus on results. You look for different opportunities, new opportunities that are coming up. You lead people to deal with the changes that happen and give them feedback so that they can keep learning. So those are some of the attributes that top up for you to become a manager and a leader at the same time. In leadership, you become a role model. You lead by example. You inspire people by giving them an inspiring vision and directing their emotions based on how you communicate. You enable people by growing them and making them become better. And you are an achiever because you consistently and persistently focus on results and lead change in whatever direction that people need to go. And that means that leadership comes with a paradox, and that's why sometimes it feels like the weak side of management, if I may put it that way, because it's a big paradox. Because what you're telling people is that you need to be great enough to be, but without pride. You need to be great enough to be without pride. So you're thinking, how can I be so great, but at the same time, I'm not supposed to be proud? Because that's what leadership tells us. You're still great enough as a manager, but you're not proud because you give credit to the rest of the people. You need to be planned enough to be spontaneous. Because as a manager, you plan things, but as a leader, you need to be spontaneous to deal with change. You need to be compassionate enough to be disciplined. Because you're saying if somebody is sick, they can't drop in the office, or if they need to go see somebody, you want to let them go, but you still want to make sure that people remain disciplined. Again, a tough balance. As a leader, you need to be right enough to say that I am wrong, because managers are known to be right, but you also need to learn how to say that I am actually wrong. You need to be serious enough to laugh, because you not to look like this serious person who is pushing work, but you also need to be this friendly person who makes people grow.
Work happen.
You need to be, yes, you need to make work happen. You need to be wise enough to admit that you don't know. So you're wise enough because we need you to know the stuff that is getting done, but we also need you to admit like you actually don't know. You need to be busy enough to listen. So of course you need to get your work done, but you also need to take a moment to listen to people and get feedback. You need to be strong enough to be open to change, because again, change happens, and in leadership you need to embrace change. You need to be leading enough to serve, because once in a while you also need to serve the people that you actually work with. And that's what makes leadership sometimes a bit tough, because it means that as a manager you become vulnerable and you become authentic enough to know to say that you are wrong, vulnerable enough to serve and to laugh and to be spontaneous to the things that happens around life. So that makes it a tough place to be sometimes. So in summary, in terms of leadership and management, in terms of some few things that you do, if you look at the makeup of the role, management looks at stability, leadership looks at change. And I think Queen alluded to that. You're trying to manage the work that you have, but to make sense out of that work, you need to think in terms of the future. If things went so wrong, like Kota was trying to explain, when changes happen a lot, we say we need leadership, because leadership looks at change, leadership looks into the future. In terms of decision making, management makes decision, leadership facilitates decision. They don't make the decision, they facilitate people to make decisions. Management plans details around constraints, the budgets that we have, the rules, the policies. Leaders sets and leads direction. So they're not constrained by what is there now. They are thinking in terms of what we are capable of becoming. Manager is short-term driven, leadership is long-term driven. Management has a formal influence, so it looks at the rules and the procedures. Leadership is more of a personal charm in terms of the influence, the energy, and the emotions speaking side of it. The manager speaks to the head, the leader speaks to the heart. So trying to influence people from the heart. Managers endorse the culture of what is written on paper, while leaders shape the culture. They shape what can actually become. Managers minimize risk. They try not to get into trouble, while leaders take risks in terms of trying what is the new thing that we can do. Leaders make the rules. Managers make the rules. They say these are the policies and procedures, is how we are operating. Leaders break the rules because they're thinking, why does it have to be this way? Maybe it can be different. Maybe in future we don't even need all this. So they break the rules. Management looks at the existing direction or keeping things as status quo, while leadership looks at new directions, challenging the norm. What can be done differently? Why do we have to do it this way? Management looks at results, while leadership looks at achievements. I hope you get the difference. Results versus achievement. Results looks at we are supposed to get 5 million this year and we got it. Achievement is looking at we got 5 million. Could we have been capable of achieving more? What resources did we look at? So the achievement is deeper and bigger than just the results. So management looks at results, the leadership looks at achievement. Could we have actually done better based on circumstances? Maybe these results are not the best that we could have done. This is not really an achievement. Management looks at doing the thing right, while leadership looks at doing the right thing. I hope that also makes sense. It's doing the thing right. You could be doing the thing right, but it is the wrong thing. Because just it is written on paper and it says this month we are supposed to have 4 activities, so we do the 4 activities. That is management. But leadership is thinking, why do we have to do 4 activities? We probably don't even need these activities. What is it that we need? So it is doing the right thing. Management looks at managing work. I think we looked at that. Leadership is more people-oriented, so it is leading people. Management, in terms of human resource, it talks people as subordinates, because there are people who subordinate you, while leadership looks at followers, people that you influence and willingly are able to follow you. Like I said, you need both. If you look at it, you actually need both. You can't have people breaking rules all the time. You can't have people speaking to people's hearts all the time. Once in a while, you need to speak to their head. Once in a while, you need them to follow the rules. So you need a balance of both under all circumstances. But you also realize most likely based on your personality, you have one side that you rely on. You are a default leader or a default manager. If you look at yourself from that angle, then you know what you need to work on to create a balance. Why leadership? Like I said, because for the longest time, schools have taught us management. Why is it that these days people are always talking about leadership? We need leadership. We need to send you for leadership courses. Why is this leadership all about? Because people have realized that people will perform at around 60% of their potential if there is no leadership. If you put the rules, set goals, push people, they'll still achieve at certain point. They have actually been achieving before we started hyping leadership. They'll achieve at around 60%. But an additional 40% can actually be realized if we put in effective leadership. And that's why we're saying we need a balance of both. Because management, yes, management as we look at it is two dimensions. It is economic or productivity based, and it's also employee condition or morale based. Economic or productivity based, that is management. It is concerned for production. Employee condition and morale is leadership focused. It is concerned for people. So you need a combination of both. You need concern for production and concern for people. What that means is that you need management and you need leadership. And because, like I said, organizations are not going to hire two people to do leading and another one to do management, we need to learn how to balance both. Like Purity said, when you wake up, based on the role that you're dealing with, you need to ask yourself, what do I need more? Do I need more of leadership or do I need of management? Or do I need to be able to balance both? So like I said, you have a default setting, but also depending on the work that you do, there might be one that you need more than the other. So again, it's also good to think about it from that perspective. It's 10 minutes past the hour. Thank you very, very much. So unless you guys have a comment or questions around supervision, management, and leadership, that would have been the end of my a lot of talking and my journey to Kigali.
I know. See you soon.
Back to you guys.
Yes. What do you guys think?
I have learned a lot, and I think now I can differentiate the two more
The
clearly.
three.
The three, rather, the three.
Yes.
Supervision, leadership, and management, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. We are waiting to meet you in Kigali, like you said.
Yes, I need to show up in Kigali so that I can talk to you face to face.
Kigali, I love the food. The food is amazing.
It goes all the way for food.
I love the food.
I know.
Love the people. The city is very clean, organized. Unlike the chaos we have in Nairobi, like
I know.
anytime. All right. So I think that is it. I'll send you the feedback form. People are really lagging behind around feedback forms. What's the problem, Lydia?
There is no problem. People are just reluctant.
They're just feeling lazy.
On that. Yes, they are lazy. I'll emphasize on that.
Yes, please. Also, next week is a bit busy. We have that session on Monday and 2 others. Next week is very busy, actually. And what I would like to emphasize on, if you attend change management 1, you must attend change management 2. Like, it's a continuation. Yes. It's not a new topic. So I think that's something you might want to talk to your team. And the fact that it's like, I've done it for Kenya, I've done it for Uganda, and I've also done it for your South Sudan team. So I think it's a very important topic across Q-sourcing. So just encourage them to join on time so that we also finish on time. But they have to be present for both 1 and 2. Because that one is, they're very interdependent, unlike these ones. Like, once you miss this one, but for change, you have to be able to attend change management 1 and change management 2.
Okay, Purity.
All right. So today you're much lucky. Tomorrow you're still going to work. On last Friday, you were looking at me like, why? What are we still talking?
Yeah, tomorrow we have the whole day without Purity.
Without me, I thought it's a bad thing. All right. Talk to you guys next
The
week on
joke.
Monday.
Yeah. All right.
Yes. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye bye,
Bye-bye.
Queen. I don't know why you did not
Bye.
ask Queen for comments. She's looking at she wanted to say something.
You want to say something, Queen?
I think what I wanted to say is that this session was insightful. For myself, I identified some few gaps about, or even it's a learning curve for myself as a leader, even to whom I aspire to be, even in my line of work. So thank you, Rosemary.
For sure. All right.
Thank
Say
you
hi to
very
my,
much.
yes. Say hi to the rest of the team. And thank you so much, Rosemary, as well, for your time, dedication. Thank you so much for turning up for this. All right. Talk to you guys soon. God bless you all and good evening.
Okay, good evening. Bye, guys. See you on Monday.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.